All right, everyone. Welcome to Advanced Real Estate Objection Handling. I'm Brett Matzer, for those of you that don't know me. And in this Advanced Real Estate Objection Handling, this is where I go through and I break down and I help you rebuttal common real estate objections using conversational selling. Now, what is conversational selling? I had that question presented to me a few days ago. And conversational selling is exactly what it sounds like. It's having a conversation in the selling process. I think salespeople get a bad rap. And I think they get a bad rap because throughout our industry, the common saying or the common theme goes back to a movie called Glengarry Glen Ross, where it's the ABCs, always be closing. And I think that I think all of us, doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter if you're a real estate agent, especially when it comes to consuming, when it comes to the consumer, doesn't matter what you're buying, is you really don't want to be sold and closed on all the time. Has there ever been a time where you're on the phone and you're talking to someone, and every time you say something, it's always a closing statement? They're just always hammering you. And then I want you to think about, how does that make you feel, right? If you're like me, it turns you away. Now, the selling process is not just a process just to sell goods and services. Now, that's the objective. The selling process is about solving a problem. And the bigger problem you solve, the more money that you'll make. And in real estate, people have big problems. And the bigger the problem, the more money you're going to make. So conversation selling is just taking the way that we communicate with your friends, your family, your relatives, people that you're comfortable with. There's a process behind it. Typically what it is that you engage in conversation, and it's a two-way conversation. And it's a combination of listening, acknowledging, and asking questions, and it goes back and forth. So that's what conversational selling is about. And that's what I break down using this style of selling. And the whole point is just to make sure that the other party's comfortable and you're actually walking them through down the aisle. Now, when you walk somebody down a path of buying something or committing to something or selling something, the whole point is to get them to make a decision. And whether that decision whether it be yes or no, the whole point is just to get them to that process. So what we've been doing over the course of these most recent videos is I've been going over the Mike Ferry 40 real estate objections. And today we're going to go over objections number 12 and number 13. And if you want to download this list, now the reason why I use Mike Ferry is because he's he's definitely the grandfather of all sales training in real estate. But this is who I got started with, 20 some odd years ago, 6 months into the business. And it's the Mike Ferry industry that really gave me the foundation, organized foundation of sales skills. Now, things have evolved since then. No different than anything else that you learn. You learn something, you make it your own, and you adapt to a different style. That's very similar to what happened with the martial arts. But if you'd like to download this, there is free resources. You just simply go to mikeferry.com. I like to give credit where credit is due. So as I break down these various different objections, I tend to go through what I call, and what I've coined, the ultimate rebuttal formula. And the way that this is broke down is that number one is when somebody gives you a question, a concern, also known as a objection, you're going to acknowledge what they say. Now, you're going to want to acknowledge what they say simply because the fact is that have you ever felt like you're not being listened to? Okay, you don't want the consumer, the person you're talking to feel like you're not hearing them. So acknowledging them is just a form of active listening. You're going to approve, or you're going to make them right, or you're going to bunch them in and make it feel like they're not crazy. So I'll share with you some of those techniques. You're going to throw in what I call a softener. And that is just a prerequisite statement that goes in to your following ask a question. Now, this ties into everything that we've talked about is in conversational selling. It makes it to where you're having a conversation with them. It's not they give you an objection and then all of a sudden you do a closing statement on them. Now, there's time and a place for that, and we'll walk through that. So the first objection we're going to go through today is number 12, which is, if we have to sell that low, we're going to sell it ourselves and then pay a 3% commission or pay 3% to the agent that sells it. And the next one we're going to go over is number 13. We don't want to list a price. We don't want to list at a price that will get it sold in 1 week. Okay, so we're going to go over both those. Let's start at number 12. Now, remember, we're going to use the ultimate rebuttal formula in most cases. 90% of the time, I'll be using 90% of this formula. Now, I want you guys to know something. When you are communicating with people, you're not just using words. So because I do these unscripted, the structure is always going to be the same, but the words or the way that I put the words together are going to be different, but it's going to be probably 85, 90% the same as if I was going to rebuttal anyways. And I go back and I share these techniques with you because I go back in my studies coming up in the martial arts. You learn the punches, you learn the kicks, you learn these forms, you learn those techniques, but the purpose is not to learn those techniques so you use those techniques 100% in some sort of conflict. The purpose is to learn all these various different techniques so that you can start improvising, you become natural, and you start throwing those together when you need them. And that's why I call objection, or that's why I call role playing sparring, because you're really going toe to toe, and you're not really just going to be able to do the exact way that you rebuttal an objection the exact way with somebody else, because the conversation's not going to be the same. So let's go back to this. Number 12. If we have to sell that low, we will sell it ourselves and pay 3% to the agent that sells it. Now, here's what I would do on this one. First of all, the way I'm going to acknowledge it is I'm going to repeat it in the form of a question, being dumbfounded. Okay, wait. So what you're telling me is that if you have to sell it low, then you're just going to sell it yourself and pay a 3% to an agent? And then you're just going to be quiet, right? The next person that talks on that, that's what we call you're going to pause. It's a strategic pause. And it's meant to not only draw somebody in with emotion and drama, but it's also to cue their mind that it's their turn to talk. So you're going to say that and you're going to pause, and the next person who talks is going to lose, right? So if we have to sell that low, we will sell it ourselves and pay a 3% to the agent that sells it. Wait, okay. So if you have to sell it low, you're going to sell it yourself and then pay a 3% commission to an agent that sells it. Pause. Okay, give it some time. It's going to cue into the other person, then it's their turn to talk. And then they're going to give you more information. And most of the time, it's going to restructure the objection. Well, yeah, I mean, we need to sell this home, and we need to sell it, and we need to make this much money. And if we have to sell it that low, then, I'm going to have to just sell it on my own. And then if an agent brings a buyer, then we'll just sell it ourselves. Now we've restructured the actual objection, right? The first objection wasn't all that complete. All it was a statement. All it was you share with them the value of their home, and they're just saying, well, that's low, I'm just going to sell it myself. And then by you repeating that in the frame of a question, they gave you a little bit more. And then in this scenario, what they ended up doing was restructuring it because they shared more information with you, saying that they have to net X amount of dollars. Now, we don't know why. We don't know if that's actually true. We don't know if that's just a want or if it's a need. Need meaning they have to net that much to actually either pay off their existing loan or buy their next house, or want because, well, they just want it, right? Well, I want the sky to be orange. You have to have a conversation with God about that one. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a level shift. And if you followed my trainings, if you follow my videos before, what you'll find is there's not much difference that I say depending on the rebuttal, on a rebuttal. The opening or the response might be different, but as far as the the mid game, the mid part of the response, it's relatively the same. So here's where I go. All right, Mr. and Ms. Seller, I'm going to do a level shift. Mr. and Ms. Seller, I totally get that. I totally get it. Most homeowners I find want to do three things. Number one, they want to sell their home for the most money. They want to sell it in the quickest amount of time, and they want to do it with the least amount of hassle. Is that true for you as well? Okay, see how I shifted it? It was all about price before. Now I've tied it into the three common things. Look, I totally get that you want to sell it for the most money, but what I find when in speaking with homeowners, and I've sold a lot of houses, is that homeowners want three common things. Now, that is to sell the home for the most money in the quickest amount of time with the least amount of hassle. Is that true for you as well? Well, yeah, that is true for me. But I need to sell this for the most money. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to sell it. Okay. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I totally understand that you want to sell it for the most money. Do you, if you don't mind me asking, and then I'm going to go back onto my credentials. Money aside, do you feel that I have the experience after selling, hundreds of homes in this market, and the market knowledge, again, after selling me and my company selling hundreds of homes in the market, aside from the money, do you think that I'm qualified to sell your home? I mean, if we put the money aside and all we just do is talk about credentials, do you feel that I have the credentials to sell your home? Well, I do. Yes, I do. Okay. Now I sell homes full-time. I'm a full-time real estate agent. Now there's a lot of people who sell it part-time. I don't know how they do it, but I sell homes full-time. I give it a full-time commitment because selling a home is a full-time commitment. Now, if you don't mind me asking you, do you work full-time? Yes. Okay. Now you working full-time, if you're going to look to hire an agent, are you going to look to hire a full-time agent, or do you want to work with a part-time agent who does real estate on the side? Well, no, I want to sell my home with a full-time agent. I mean, I need to get it sold. Okay, so are you going to take time off from your work in order to sell the home? Because what you would be doing is you have a full-time job, and all you would be doing is just hiring yourself as a side gig to sell your home. Do you think that you'd be able to give yourself the service that you need to sell the home? Well, gosh, never really thought about that. I just figured that if I sold it myself and offer another agent to sell the home, that I could save on the commission. In theory, that makes a whole lot of sense. But how much is your time worth? Well, what do you mean? Well, if you agree and I agree that it takes a full-time job to sell a home and you're going to work on it part-time, do you think that possibly it might take away from time from your full-time work and then, of course, require you to work nights, weekends? Perhaps we have holidays come up. Do you think that would be an option? Well, yeah, I didn't really think about it like that. Okay. And have you ever sold a home on your own? No, I've never sold a home on your own. Okay. So if you've never sold a home on your own, do you know the process and the legalities of actually selling your home? Or are you okay with putting yourself in that type of a legal risk? No, I don't want to do that. Okay. I totally get it. Well, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the home is going to sell with what the market is. So you're not selling it low. You're selling it at what the market value is. And if you don't mind me asking, if I could show you a way that it would net you more money by working with me as a full-time agent than by actually trying to sell it yourself, would you list your home with me? Well, yeah, I guess, now that you put it that way, I would. But how are you going to do that? Now, I'm going to stop right there just because of time. How are you going to show them that you're going to net them more money by selling it, by paying a full commission, by paying a real estate agent, than them selling it on your own? And guys, it comes down to time. It comes down to time, and it comes down to experience. Because most homeowners have zero clue on how to sell their home. In fact, NAR says that on average, a homeowner sells a home every 10 years. In Southern California, it's probably more like 14, but 10 to 14 years, let's just call it that. So they have no idea how to sell a home. And if they have no idea how to sell a home, if they have no idea how to price a home, if they're going to be working on it part-time, what are the chances that they're going to be able to get full-time results from that? Now, what you're going to want to do is find out what their debt service is and how much their money is worth. And if it takes them 2 or 3 months of being on the market, how much is that going to equate to in the amount of time that they put into it and lost opportunities? And then you equate that because you're going to sell it 3 times faster. And then that's how the savings is going to be. Not to mention that they don't have the legal risk that you're fully insured. You have errors and omissions insurance. You've done hundreds of transactions. You know the process. You have your vendors lined up. You have your people. You have to build up what you get. And it goes back to the value equation, right? The value equation is what you pay divided by what you get equals value. When somebody gives you an objection that if it's only on price, and they say if they have to sell it that low and then they pay another agent a commission, a buyer's agent the commission, what they're saying is that the perceived value that they see that a real estate agent is providing isn't worth, it's less than what their time is. So through your questioning and through your response and through your value proposition, you need to share with them, you need to ask those questions so they come to the conclusion that there is a lot of value that comes into it. Now, only you can do that. And you do that through practice, which is why we do these trainings and which is why we have the role-playing group. So that's how I would respond to the objection, number 12 objection. If we have to sell that low, we'll sell it ourselves and pay a 3% to the agent. Now, before I move on to the next one, I want to point out, I totally level shifted that. If you notice, what we started out with as an objection was not the final objection that I rebutted. It was just through the Q&A, it was through my questioning that I gradually went down the path, asking them about their situation and then responding to their situation. Because remember, as salespeople, we get paid to solve problems. Yes, we actually get paid when a house sells, but not selling a house or trying to sell a house, or especially in this crazy market, then you get paid more for the bigger problem that you solve. So that's number 12. Okay, now I'm going to work on rebuttaling objection number 13 of Mike Ferry's 40 real estate objection handlers. And what that is, we don't want to list at a price that will get it sold in 1 week. I've actually gotten this objection before in time. Actually, probably a few times I've gotten this. So this is one of those objections that if you're talking to enough people, if you're talking to enough people that own property, they're going to be selling their homes, you're going to come up with this one. Now, just like prior strategies, I am going to start off rebuttaling this, reframing it as a question. And actually, I'm really dumbfounded on this, legitimately. Wait, you don't want to list at a price that will get your home sold in 1 week? Remember, strategic pause. The next person that talks loses. Well, you want to make sure, give it time for the mind to cue in that it's the other person's to talk. Well, yeah, I feel that if we list the property and it sells within a 1 week time span, that we're leaving money on the table. Oh, I totally get it. So you feel that if we list it at a price that causes the property to sell within a week, then you're actually leaving money on the table. I totally get it. Look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in my 23 years of experience, I've sold thousands of homes, and I've sold hundreds of homes within this market. And what I find is that there's 3 common denominators when it comes up with sellers. Number 1 is they want to sell their home for the most money. Number 2, they want to sell it in the quickest amount of time. And number 3, they want to do it the least amount of hassle. Is that true for you as well? Well, yeah, that's true for me as well, but we don't want to give the home away. Absolutely not. I don't want you to give that home away. Now, if you don't mind me asking, how long do you want it to take to sell your home? Interesting question, right, guys? It's a legitimate question. If you were talking to one of your friends, somebody who you had rapport with, and someone came up with you with such a ridiculous statement saying, hey, I want to sell my house, but I don't want to sell it in a week, wouldn't you ask them, say, okay, that's a really interesting point. How long do you want it to take? What if it took 3 months? Do you want it to take 3 months? Well, no, I don't want to take it 3 months. Okay, so is there a time frame that you want to sell it in? And this really comes back to you pre-qualifying the candidate, the seller. You have to find out what their why is, and you have to find out what their when is. Why are they selling, their motivation, and when they want to sell? Because if they have to be somewhere in 3 months, yeah, they don't want to sell their home in a week because they still have to live somewhere in 3 months. Now, in this market, at the time we're doing this training, In this market, you want to sell it fast, because we're going into a year of uncertainty. So in my conversations with agents, with everybody, I think personally that it's foolish not to sell your home when home prices are at the top of the market in the history of forever, and we're going into a period of really unknown. If you're looking to sell your home in the reasonable near future. So these people who are saying, I want to wait until spring or I want to wait until summer, they're planning on selling it. I honestly think that it's foolish for them to roll that dice and gamble that things aren't going to disconnect, that 2021 is going to be a more crazy year than 2020. But that's their choice. And the way that you actually have to get them to, by you telling them that is not going to change anything for them. The only way that you're going to change things for them is you're going to have to engage their logical part of their brain and force them to answer questions, tough questions. Okay, so when I come back to them and say, okay, I totally get it, but if you don't mind me asking, how long do you want it to take? Okay, so I want it to take, I just want to make sure that I'm getting the most out of my money. Look, I totally get it. Most homeowners, like I said, one of the things that's really important is netting the most money for their home. But do you know what the average time on market is right now? No, I don't. And guys, this is a true number. The average time on market now is 11 days. 11 days. Do you know how many months of inventory there is right now? No, Brett, I don't know how many months of inventory. Notice how I'm just not telling those stats. I'm asking them if they know. Chances are they don't know. Even if they do know, I'm just going to agree with them and I'm just going to repeat what the answer is. But you want to keep the other party engaged. The problem that I find that a lot of salespeople have is that they go into delivery mode, training mode, information delivery mode, and it just really needs to be a two-way conversation. So the way that you do that, number one, is don't ever ask a question you don't know the answer to. But number two, ask them questions simply to keep them engaged so they're not a spectator, they're actually a participant in the conversation. So do you know how many months supply is? No, I don't. How many months of supply? There's 2 months of supply here. Guys, that's a true number in Orange County. There's a 2-month supply. What that means is that if no new homes came onto the market, all of Orange County homes would be depleted in 2 months. Now, that's a great opportunity for you. Do you know why? Why? Because what that means is that it's a seller's market, and the fact that it's 11 days, if we price your home accurately within where the market says, it's not going to sell in a week. On average, it's going to sell in 11 days. And then pause. And then they're going to sit there and they're going to contemplate that. Now, you said that you actually have to be, in your new place by, X amount of time, right? Right. Okay. So that is in alignment with what we're talking about. We actually need to sell this home within the next probably 11 to 15 days, because what we find is that escrow periods, if the buyer's going to get a loan, we're probably looking at a 40 to 45 day time period just to actually go through the escrow process and actually get it sold. So it's not just selling it and getting into escrow and finding somebody who wants to buy it. It is the time frame that we have to coordinate all the chaos that goes with selling a home and make sure it lands on one day so that you can maximize your proceeds, so that you can get your money and you can move on to your next house. Isn't that what you're actually looking to do? Guys, that's my assumption. And I'm shaking my head, yes. Isn't that what you're really looking to do? Well, yeah, it is what I'm looking to do. Now, guys, I know that's what they're looking to do. Now, Brett, why do you know that's why people are looking to do that? Because I know I've talked to sellers. And I promise you, every single seller wants to sell their home for the most money in the quickest amount of time with the least amount of hassle. That's why when I started in my solo career as an agent, that's why I focused on defaults, right? Because I have a consumer that didn't care how much they sold the home for. They didn't want a sign in the yard. You didn't want to market it. And they didn't care what I charged for commission. I mean, it's the perfect person. Yeah, there's other things that went with it. But I've never met a seller that wanted to sell their home in the longest amount of time for the least amount of money for the most amount of hassle. I've never found that. And when you do find that, because it does exist, that's why you sort them out through the pre-qualification process. If through your pre-qualifying that you come across somebody that wants to sell it for the most money for the least amount of money in the longest amount of time and for the most amount of hassle, not a good problem to have, not a good thing. The only good thing about that is that they want it sold for the lowest amount of money. But the other two, that person does not exist on planet Earth. So that's how we rebuttal number 13. We don't want to list at a price that will get it sold in 1 week. Now, in closing, here's what I want you guys to take away from this. It's not the words. It's not the words that are going to get you to rebuttal it. It is having the conversation. It's asking the questions. And it's the way that you say it. You know, we talk about strategic pauses. We talk about these various different techniques. Now, these are techniques that you use anyways, because we've all learned how to speak English and we've all learned how to communicate with other people. So these are things that we do naturally. But once you understand the science behind it, and once you actually start deliberately practicing it, you're going to be able to deliberately put it into your communication, and you're going to be able to control and navigate the conversation and the rebuttal much easier than if you weren't practicing it. Okay. So guys, that's it for today. We went a little bit over. I apologize for that, but thank you for those of you that attended this live. And if you want to catch the replay, it's going to be up on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, type in my name, Brett Matsura. You'll find it and you'll have access to all the trainings. And while you're there, please subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified of any new training. So thanks a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys at the next training.